you need to give time to your customers so they can adjust to the new models you are trying to introduce. And maybe sometimes the strategy that you are implementing won't work in the beginning, but if you just wait little, then it can bring the results.
Coffee's for closers only.
So we've established my proposal is sound in principle. Now we're just haggling over price.
Let's see how much we're going for on eBay.
It's the same as Dunkin' Donuts. Costs 15 times the price.
Today's podcast is sponsored by Jennings Executive Search. I had a great conversation with John Jennings about the skills needed in different pricing roles. He and I think a lot alike. If you're looking for a new pricing role, or if you're trying to hire just the right pricing person, I strongly suggest you reach out to Jennings Executive Search. They specialize in placing pricing people. Say that 3 times fast. Welcome to Impact Pricing, the podcast where we discuss pricing, value, and the distributed relationship between them. I'm Mark Stiving, and today our guest is Magdalena Bay. Here are 3 things you want to know about Magda before we start. She's been working in business development for 8 years. She is an expert, maybe, in the MVNO market, which we're going to learn all about. And my favorite thing is she shows her 2 golden retrievers at dog shows. I love dogs. Welcome, Magda.
Hi, Mark. Thank you for your invitation.
Oh, it's going to be fun, I hope. And you're going to teach me something that I know nothing about, so this will be awesome. Let me start with, how did you get into pricing?
Actually, I'm not really into pricing, but I started to learn it when I started to sell. And then it just came naturally.
Pricing came naturally? Pricing doesn't come naturally to anybody.
Well, this is the normal thing for you, right?
It is for me, but I've studied it hard. So we're going to talk today about MVNO. And in all honesty, I had no idea what it was. I Googled it just so I could know what it was. But would you please describe for me and the listeners, what is MVNO?
This is Mobile Virtual Network Operator. And basically, just to make it very simple, on the market, you have MNOs, which are mobile network operators. And these are all these big boys that are providing you with your mobile subscriptions.
So here in the US, we would call those AT&T and Verizon.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is that they have all the infrastructure, and the most important part is that they have the radio network. And then there are...
Magda, 1 second. Just to make sure we're not leaving out all the rest of the countries, can you list a few more really big ones internationally that other...
Yes. So you have Orange, you have T-Mobile, you have Free, which is present in different countries. So basically, these are the big carriers that are providing the connectivity, but the thing is that they should have all the infrastructure. Most important, they should have the radio network. And then we have mobile virtual network operators, MVNOs. And these are these guys that need to go to the MNO and get some of the infrastructure from them. What I mean is that they have to get the radio, and depending on the model, they have some own elements at their side, and they started also to provide the connectivity, but still using the host operator. And this business started to be very popular because it gives you some competitive advantages. The most important part is that you can offer services under your own name, under your own brand. You bind your customers by building some loyalty programs, and obviously the thing is that you can have some additional services that the big operators, they just don't have the capacity to offer it.
Okay, so let's go through this for a second. First, do you know of any MVNO names in the US?
Yeah, well, for example, Telecol, this is a very niche company, I believe. They are actually working on a US market and on a Brazilian market. And as far as I know, they are offering some connectivity for those who are traveling between these two countries.
Okay. And while we're talking, I'm looking it up just to see if I could find some. So we have some like some names: Affinity, AirVoice, Assist Wireless, Beast Mobile. Okay. So these are all small little companies that we may not know per se. And yet they're licensing or renting space on Verizon and AT&T and T-Mobile's networks. Is that right?
Yes, exactly.
Okay. And so now tell me why. I love the name Beast Mobile. So let's talk about that one for a second. Not that we're going to talk about it as though we know it, but why would I, as a consumer, buy from Beast Mobile instead of from AT&T?
We are assuming that AT&T, this is a big company. They don't have this huge capacity, so maybe their customer service is not that good anymore. And waiting in the line is like pretty annoying for you. Maybe you are looking for some additional services, and the plans you think they are a little bit too traditional, not offering you all these new trends that are coming up. Or maybe I don't know that. I don't know Beast Mobile, but there are, for example, some MVNOs that are offering services to football fans, to one of the local football clubs. So probably such a company would focus on some benefits for the fans.
Okay, so I could create Mark's mobile system.
Exactly. And then you could see Mark's mobile on the screen of your phone.
Yes. And so in order for me to create Mark's mobile, I have to find customers. So you're gonna subscribe to Mark's mobile system, and then I have to find a provider. So I have to go to AT&T or Verizon and get them to let me use their network so that you can make calls on their network.
Yes, or you can use some companies like aggregators, enablers that are in between, and they can facilitate your integration. They can provide you with a kind of like ready-to-go system, a quicker solution, and just save some of your stress and efforts connected to talking to the MNO.
Perfect. Okay, I think I understand this now. So tell me about pricing. What's the issue with pricing? What's interesting about pricing in this industry?
I don't know. Maybe everyone can say it about his industry, that pricing is tough. I believe that probably this is not an exception here. Pricing here is extremely difficult in this sense that obviously some of the customers want to have everything the cheapest possible way. And in this setup, the infrastructure and building everything cost your investment. You have to get your return on this investment, and well, as you mentioned before, MVNOs are always competing with this big boys, with the MNOs. So this is like almost impossible to be on the same level, pricing level.
And so when we think about an MVNO pricing, are we thinking about their prices to the consumer?
Yes, to the end users.
To the end users. And my feeling is I trust AT&T, I trust Verizon. So if I were ever going to use an MVNO, it would be because it was less expensive and I was price sensitive. Is that true or not true?
No, probably. That is true because this is the trend on the market. that we have to educate our customers and explain them what are the benefits of joining MVNO. But the thing is that the biggest core advantage here is that probably the MVNO would have some additional services that the MNO cannot offer. So
Okay.
it would rarely be on the pricing. It would rather be on something else.
Well, that's the way I love business, right? I don't like doing business as in let me compete on price. I'd much rather compete on value and things that we can do for customers.
But
So,
this is difficult, right?
oh yes, absolutely. It's not the easy thing. You had mentioned football fans in an area. What can you think of some things that a MVNO could do that would add value?
Yeah, well, for example, they could have a customized mobile app that would have a kind of special loyalty program inside. So every time you are going on a football match, then you are getting some points, and these points you can use for your mobile subscription. And every time you are using, I don't know, 3 gigabytes of the internet, then you're getting 5% discount on the match.
Also, it's a way to essentially bundle the pricing of the cellular service with the pricing of going to football matches.
It could be a strategy.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting, because then you have to decide, does that fit? Who would do that? That would be pretty interesting. What are some other features that people might put in an MVNO to get me to pay more than Verizon? Right, Verizon happens to be my provider. I pay Verizon.
Well, in general, the rule is that I'm telling to my customers most optimal thing is when you have already at least one product running, and then you add MVNO to this as the next one. Like the best situation would be, for example, if you are a TV operator, a local TV operator, and you already have maybe like in this older world fixed line, and then you have a TV package, and now you are becoming MVNO, then you bundle it and you do like a triple or quadruple package. So the biggest benefit here is that you as the end user are getting everything on one bill. You don't have to deal with 4 companies, but you just get electronically the statement of your usage on one PDF, right?
Yeah. And so do you understand how the pricing to the MVNO works?
There could be different models, and this refers to both when we are talking about the pricing that we are getting. We meaning in this case, I'm representing the enabler that is in between. But what I mean is that there would be a different pricing model that is coming from the MNO for the MVNO, and there can be different pricing models also to the end users. As you know, to the end users, you can have postpaid, prepaid. Now, for example, in Poland, it is very often you can have no limits, which is also kind of tricky.
Yeah, the unlimited piece.
Yes.
How does that work, by the way? If you're an MVNO, do you get an unlimited plan from your MNO?
Yeah, this is what I mean, that it can be different. Normally, you are offered 2 different models to choose, and they have as everything advantages and disadvantages. So assuming that you would get also unlimited plans from the MNO, then you are very limited on how much you can earn, because you are only limited to this I don't know, just saying any number, but let's say 2 zloty per bundle, right? Or €2 per bundle, just any number I'm saying now.
Yeah.
And you can't grow on this, if you know what I mean.
I do. There's only so much you can go. So this is pretty interesting. And so as an MVNO, I'm going to pay an MNO based on which features I get.
No. Features. It is likely that you would need to develop them on your side. So if, for example, you want to have a kind of like special throttle on data, maybe slower the speed of the internet, then most likely you would do it on your side. It depends. It can sometimes also be offered by the MNO, but this is mostly, the game is mostly about the pricing. So here starts like the whole tricky part. Of course, the more volumes you have, the better. And in the beginning, it is pretty tough to be profitable here. So we know more or less what is the break-even point for the MVNO, how many end users needs to be there to have it. I don't know if this is natural in the other businesses, but here we are playing on a breakage. Should I explain you how I'm seeing it?
Oh, please. So tell me what breakage means.
So just maybe to show it, to explain it on an example. Let's assume that I'm buying from the MNO, I'm buying minutes, SMSs and data, and paying for the real usage. While to my end users, I'm offering this in a kind of bigger packages. So you are getting 200 minutes, 100 SMSs, and 5 gigabytes. You are paying a certain price for this, and I'm assuming that you won't use it. So in some cases, you won't use it. Well, some customers will never use it, and some of them they would be heavy users, so they always put statistics up. In the beginning, there are the psychological trends that when you buy your subscription, then you remember that you have it, you remember how much you paid, so you are using more. Then you forget about it, maybe you put it to the drawer and don't use it at all. So over time, your usage is going down. And here, in this case, the most you have to sometimes even assume that for these heavy users, you would lose some money, but then on average, you would be profitable.
Yeah. So in a lot of ways, it's like an insurance company where it's okay that we lose money on a few people as long as we're making money on a lot of people.
Yes. Or on any kind of sports subscription, for example, that most of the users won't go there so often, and maybe don't even use their subscription, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Magda, what have I missed? This is such a new industry for me that I don't know what I need to ask you.
Actually, I would like to ask you some questions.
Well, feel free anytime.
I would love to know how do you approach your consulting when you are coming to, like in this case, like a totally new industry for you? What is the process? Is there like any kind of discovery process where you are analyzing the pricing, the agreements? How does it work?
Constantly. So I get into new industries all the time. In fact, I just had a call with an industry that I didn't know anything at all about, and it was fun. And what we always do is look at who's making what decisions. So if I were trying to coach your industry, your company on how to do pricing, what we would be doing is we'd be saying, okay, who's buying from your company? Who's buying the product? And if I were to assume for a second that you are an MVNO, then I would say, okay, who's the customer? And how are we going to win that customer? And what is it that they value? What are the choices they would make? So in my world, right? So let's assume that you own Beast Mobile. That's my favorite MVNO now. So you own Beast Mobile. You're trying to figure out how to price for your customers. We would say, well, okay, if I didn't buy from you, what would I buy? Well, I'd buy Verizon or AT&T or something like that.
Mm-hmm. So you do the benchmarking, right?
Yeah, so you have to do the benchmarking, but
Yeah.
you also need to know what's the value that I offer above and beyond what those guys offer, or what's the value they offer above and beyond what I offer, so that I can price relative to that value.
Yes, I understand.
And so it's always the decision.
So, well, US, this is a big market. So, in such case, would you try to get also some experience from the other countries or not? No, because I think US is so specific, right?
So I think the opposite. I do not think the US is so specific. I think the US is so varied. I think a ton about market segmentation and price segmentation. Mm-hmm. If you were to look across the US, and in fact, I'm sitting here looking at a list of MVNOs in the US, and it looks like it's got to be 200, 300 different MVNOs in here. And it would make sense to me to say each one of these is targeting a different market segment. And what I would always recommend is, can we define who that market segment is? Why do we have an advantage in that segment? What are the things they care about? And then specifically, how does that segment make decisions between my product and AT&T or Verizon or some other MVNO?
Yes, and probably you are very right, because if you know that your MVNO is going to provide services to this niche, for example, let's say fishermen, and fishermen that are fishing around the lake somewhere in Nevada, they have a very bad coverage on AT&T. But well, if for example they could use another operator and add some maybe national roaming, and maybe this MVNO has some other services. Now I'm putting a story, but maybe somehow they can strengthen the network, the signal, and so on and so on, then fishermen would love to pay more.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. If there's a way to guarantee to a fisherman that there's better service at the fishing spots, at the lakes, than there is during from other providers, absolutely. That's a huge value add. And now we've chosen a market segment. Now, what I would be doing as far as what I care about other countries, I care about what I could learn from other countries. I would want to know what was successful in different places and try to get ideas from them to know what could I do in my country. How would I be able to do something different, or which market segment would I choose? But I would think that I would probably wouldn't just say, hey, we're going to be like France. Hey, we're going to be like Poland. I would say, what's similar and what could I borrow from them that makes sense?
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's right. How about taking the experience from other industries?
Definitely, if I could think of an industry that makes sense like this. I haven't studied the industry, but I know that in some states, I could buy electricity from more than one company, but there's only one set of lines that come to my house, which means that one company is providing all the infrastructure, but there's other people selling me the electrons. which is probably relatively similar to this industry. And maybe there are ways to learn from that industry to say, okay, now how would I do that in terms of reselling this service or reselling this feature? But if I could think of industries that were the same, I would try to.
Understand. Well, probably there are much more aspects I could think of. Maybe in telecommunication, this is not that happening, not that often, that you would also extend the package for more months. Because normally the validity of the package is only 30 days or 1 month.
Yeah. And so to be fair, I think we can learn pricing lessons from every industry. Essentially, Beast Mobile is trying to sell me a subscription. Even if I only have to sign up for 1 month at a time, they want me to buy next month and next month and next month. So anybody selling subscriptions, what can I learn from the subscription industry? Or if I'm going to raise prices and I'm Beast Mobile, I can learn about how to raise prices by watching how other companies raise prices and what works and what doesn't work, and how to communicate that to my customers. So there are things we can learn from everywhere, which I think is how I do pricing, is I'm always watching things that people do and trying to understand why it worked that way. Why did somebody do that? How did the people respond who are making the decisions using those prices? So there's all.
Understand. Yeah, that's very interesting.
Nice. Magda, I have so enjoyed talking to you, but I'm going to ask you the hard question. I'm going to ask you the last question no matter what.
Please go ahead.
What's the one piece of pricing advice you would give our listeners that you think could have a big impact on their business?
I would say that you need to give time to your customers so they can adjust to the new models you are trying to introduce. And maybe sometimes the strategy that you are implementing won't work in the beginning, but if you just wait little, then it can bring the results.
Nice. And so I'm going to interpret that based on these MVNOs that we've been talking about for this whole conversation. And that is, an MVNO comes out and they say, hey, let me go try this new strategy. Let me go try targeting fishermen, or let me go try targeting this special area. And we need to give it a little bit of time to say, does this really work or not?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. And
everything takes time.
Yes. And it's so funny. I'm glad you brought that up, because it's often when I deal with people who are releasing new products or something like that, they think, oh my gosh, it's not selling the way I want it to. I need to lower the price. And in truth, that's probably not the problem. The problem is usually they aren't communicating the value to the right market segment yet. And
yes, this is what I wanted to say.
Yeah. If they would refocus their communication, their marketing and their sales, then they probably could win at the prices they think they should be winning at.
Yes, and now if they take such a decision, there is no way back.
Yeah. Magda, this has been fun. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time today. If anybody wants to contact you, how can they do that?
Basically, they can contact me over LinkedIn.
Okay, we'll have your LinkedIn URL in the show notes. That'll be pretty easy for everybody to find. Episode 176 is all done. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this, would you please leave us a rating and a review? And please tell your pricing colleagues about this podcast. I was at PPS a month or so ago, and I was just shocked that there were people in pricing who haven't heard of our podcast yet. How frustrating could that be? So if you know anybody in pricing that could listen, would you please share? And finally, if you have any questions or concerns about the podcast or pricing in general, feel free to email me, mark@impactpricing.com. Now, go make an impact. Thanks again to Jennings Executive Search for sponsoring our podcast. If you're looking to hire someone in pricing, I suggest you contact someone who knows pricing people. Contact Jennings Executive Search.